Would you pray with me a moment? Open my lips that my mouth might show forth your praise. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I don't know if it ever occurred to you, but life has a way of just happening if you let it. Life happens, in fact, whether you want it to or not. The truth is, you can't stop life from happening. Once you're born, life just rolls along like water finding its way downhill. Minute by minute, hour by hour, days into weeks and weeks into months and months into years and years into decades. Until you reach a point where it's become a lifetime. And if you have the inclination, you might pause and look back and notice how it trickled and streamed downhill and brought you to where you are right now. It could be that while you were living, the trickling seemed random, that you ran into that rock and went down that gully, were it not for hope. For hope is to entertain expectation of something desired, to expect, to trust, to have confidence, to anticipate, to look forward to. You see, hope gives focus and direction to the living of our lives. It's something that we do to life, as opposed to just trickling down hills and bouncing off of rocks. Our hope channels our lives. It aims us in a direction. It inspires us to set off. It keeps us from moving where we might not want to go or getting lost. Because the truth is, life can all too easily seem like aimless wandering, or a blinding rush, or endless tedium, or just hard work, or constant thrills and parties, were it not for our hope, which keeps us focused. Faith, hope, and love abide, these three, the three great biblical virtues. Now, virtue is not a word that we use very much this day. It's sort of old-fashioned, but it comes from Latin, virtus, meaning strength, meaning a muscle that must be exercised if it's going to be strong, meaning each of us have to work at them. You don't get muscles by themselves. And I've noticed in my conversations with folks outside the church and in, that these virtues get a bad rap these days. People say, well, you know, faith is foolish. It's unscientific. It flies in the face of facts. Or hope. Most people think when I talk about hope, I'm talking about delusional thinking or wishful thinking. Or when we talk about love, well, we just heard the song of Paul. It's all so cliched. It's all warm and fuzzy. There wasn't a warm and fuzzy word in Paul. If any of you have tried to practice that. It's not the country song, it ain't what it's all cracked up to be. People tell me faith, hope, and love, these are juxtaposed to reality, but I would say faith, hope, and love give meaning to the human experience. All of the pinnacles of our human experience grew out of faith, hope, and love. It is the human direction of reality rather than the downhill trickle. So on this Mother's Day, I want to talk to you about hope. Because I think that becoming a mother is just about the most hopeful thing a person can do with her life. The moment you decide to become a mother, you have set a hope for the rest of your life that you are going to give birth to and nurture and raise and form and be a support and comfort to and be a constant friend to, a source of wisdom to this new person who you've never met. There will be equal time for men on Father's Day, although most of you I know won't be here because it's the summer then. But you can watch it on YouTube. My mother was a woman of endless hope, which is not to say she was perfect. The fruit does not fall too far from the tree, so you can see that perfection was not something that we aimed for in my home. She had plenty of shortcomings. She had plenty of shortcomings that were actual overcomings, as in over the top. Most of my mother's shortcomings was she was too much in a certain way. But hope was at the core of how she lived her life. One of the most obvious things I noticed about my mother as a boy that I didn't see other mothers doing to their sons was she would talk about everything, about how her children and her home was her creative expression in the world. I'm like, Mom, please not now in front of my friends. My mother would sit me down for everything and tell me the why, the how of what something means for everything. There was nothing that my mother did when I was in her home that did not come along with a well thought out origin story, a sense of meaning, and a hopeful destination. She would tell us, I ordered every one of you, Max. You are exactly what I wanted. She stopped saying that in the teen years, but she started in the young years. She would tell us over and over and over again, and if my sisters were here, they would know that I was not exaggerating, the exact same things. I want you to enjoy good food. Well, I do, Mother. I want you not to be afraid to try new things. I want you to love music, books, and art, not just as a recipient, but as a creator. I want you to never stop learning new things and always push your mind. And I want you to long to see the world and the great adventures that are out there. These were all hopes of hers, each an expectation of something worth expecting, if we could just keep heading in that direction, climbing up that hill, following that trail. Now, part of growing up is the difficult work of differentiating ourselves from our parents, getting out from under their shadow, having our own hopes in life and not just living theirs, which brings me to one of my mother's overcomings. It's a new word. It doesn't mean what you think. It's the opposite of shortcomings. It was when she would come on very strong. She would always draw my own hopes into the shadow of her wings, like when I got a PhD. Even though she could not speak a word of Icelandic and never read a medieval saga in her life, but in her mind, we had done it together. Or when she would hear me preach a good sermon, that's my boy. Like, Mom, no, I did this. Or when she would see me being what she thought was a good parent. Well, that's how I raised you. The truth is, you get to a certain point in life when you realize that my hopes had grown out of her hopes that she had planted in me as a boy. The love of books and arts and music, of ideas and beauty, of adventure, and of family. But just to give you one last example of my mother's hope, which is powerful, and it might strike you as sad, but it's remarkable when you think about it. My mother married my father because he was just about to go off to Africa for an extended stay, 3 years, way back in 1960. No internet, no phones, everything was by letter. And they went. My older sister was born there. And when they came back to America, my mother became a 1960s housewife. And there were more babies, including me. And eventually, their marriage soured. And they were divorced. And my mother, at the age of 47 or 48, had to go out and get a job at a time when getting a job was not all that easy for a woman with a college degree and 20 years in the home. And she had to make a career for herself, save enough money to buy a home so that she might retire someday. And after Africa, she never got farther than Canada. But when she died, and I was cleaning up her things, I opened a desk drawer. And in that desk drawer was a pile of passports. The first one, 1978, the year of her divorce. I bet you it was the first thing she did when the papers came through. The next one, 1988. 1998, 2008. She renewed these passports every year and died a year after the last one had expired. And in those pictures, I saw her transform from a 47-year-old woman into an old lady. And after I finished crying, I thought, she never lost hope. And I remember when she was on her deathbed, she was still talking to me about the places she would love to see someday. Our faith, my friends, is about hope. And it's not what a lot of people outside the church think. They want to think hope and faith are about delusion or foolishness, the opposite of reality. But hope is in the midst of reality. There's nothing more real, my friends, than life happening and the death that comes to us all eventually. That is reality. But in the midst of this life and this death is our hope of the resurrection, of new life from death, of aiming at love no matter what life brings your way. So this Mother's Day, rather than tell your mother how awesome she is, or cry because you miss her, do the greatest thing for your mother. Remember the hope that she planted in you. And I say this even if, especially if your relationship with your mother is complicated or conflictual, or if you've been to therapy and had to confess you don't really like the woman, or resent her or reject her. Because she gave you the gift of life to do with as you hope. What could honestly be more hopeful than that? May it be so for all of you. Amen.